What if the exhaustion and crashes you've been experiencing aren't a sign that your body is broken, but that your nervous system is stuck in survival mode? Today's guest went from being severely ill with chronic fatigue syndrome to fully recovering. And he's here to share what most doctors never tell you about chronic illness and healing. Stay tuned. Welcome to Fulfillment Therapy. I'm Kendra Nielsen, wife, mom, and licensed therapist. Do you ever feel like you're doing everything right, but you're still exhausted and empty? Did you think life, marriage, and parenting would be simpler and more rewarding? Sometimes you just want to crawl back into bed and lose yourself in screen time and chocolate, rather than face that personal or family stress. You are not alone. This podcast helps you break free of the rat race and build a richer, more meaningful life, flourishing incrementally and realistically, improving your mental health and wellness, and living with deeper purpose beyond the mundane, no matter where you are in life's journey. Welcome back to Fulfillment Therapy. Today we have a special guest with us. Miguel Bautista is the founder of CFS Recovery. After spending years severely ill with chronic fatigue syndrome and long COVID, he fully recovered and built a structured nervous system-based recovery approach, and today he helps people worldwide move from surviving to fully living again by restoring stability, capacity, and confidence in their bodies. I'm so excited to have you today, Miguel. Thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, Kendra, thank you so much for having me on. Really excited to be here. When I read your podcast description, I felt like you were describing so many people we work with, just doing everything right, but still feeling exhausted, just overwhelmed, empty inside. So really excited to be here. And for everybody listening, before we jump in, if Fulfillment Therapy has helped you in some way, do me a favor and go leave a 5-star review. I just left mine earlier, but it's not easy putting out this many episodes and putting together this content. So I appreciate what you're doing for this community and helping others.
Well, thank you so much, Miguel, and I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, those reviews help, and there's been a few different times that where like a bunch of them got deleted. So I love it when people go leave a review, so thanks for that. But tell us a little bit about you outside of your bio. We'd love to get to know you and how you arrived in this space.
Absolutely. So I'm Miguel Bautista, Kendra said, founder of CFS Recovery. We help people trying to recover from a lot of mysterious, debilitating symptoms like brain fog, where no matter how much they sleep, they wake up feeling mentally drained, or fatigued, where no matter how much they rest, they just feel like a zombie, along with dozens and dozens of other symptoms that just don't make sense. And we help them achieve full recovery through nervous system regulation and a lot of neuroplasticity-based techniques. And here's what I find fascinating about your audience, Kendra. You're with parents who are doing all the right things, but still feel depleted. I think for some of them, what they're experiencing goes beyond just the regular burnout. Their nervous system has probably gotten stuck in some kind of chronic survival state, like freeze, flight, fight. And when that happens, no amount of self-care or boundary setting or time management can fix a lot of these symptoms unless people really understand what's going on. I've been through chronic fatigue syndrome, which is essentially dealing with dozens and dozens of symptoms where you go to the doctors, they look at you, your tests come back completely fine, and they say, hey, you're normal, just go back to living. But almost everything you do makes you worse. And you start to not be able to participate in life. Some people have to go off work. Some people can't be there for their families. It's a hypersensitive nervous system issue. And we've had the opportunity of working with thousands of people in the last few years. And it's been a long journey to get here. At my worst, I was actually hospitalized, couldn't walk for about 8 months. I had to get spoon-fed by my grandparents. And we didn't know what was going on. I honestly thought I was going to die. At one point, when you're lying there, I was 22 years old, staring at a hospital ceiling, can't move. And most of the time you're wearing earplugs and an eye mask, and your symptoms are just getting worse with no explanations. It leaves you in a pretty scary spot. So luckily, I was able to meet a doctor who showed me what was going on. I was able to build frameworks around it and eventually get my life back. But like I said, it's been a really long journey to get here, which I'm happy to dive into.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I know that would speak to a lot of people that just have a lot of question marks and are not sure what to do. Like I've talked to listeners before, even about my daughter. She has a lot of question marks, has gone to every specialist. She's just started college, and same thing. Not that 8 months for you. Sounds like it would be very difficult to get a handle on. And even for me as her parent and even as a counselor, I feel like I often don't know how to support her and help her because you talked about that hypersensitive nervous system. A lot of us can't relate to that haven't experienced something like that. So we often wonder is like, how much of this is real? How much of this is imagined? How much am I playing into it? Talk us through that a little bit. I'm sure most of your clients have experienced this to some level, like maybe not being believed, not even believing themselves, or feeling really stuck and discouraged.
Yeah, there's typically a certain path that people follow who get these kind of things. Here's what I see happen to people over and over again. And here's what they do about it and how it doesn't work. And I want to be clear, I did all of this myself. So I'm not judging anybody here. This is usually the path most people take before they end up in the trenches, something like this. Typically, the person who gets this is somebody who's very driven. They're very active. They have a hard time sitting still, like always working, always moving, always just showing up to life, right? Maybe they were an athlete or a top performer, or they're always doing multiple different tasks at the same time. They were the person that the people around them could count on. And then something happened. Maybe it was COVID. Maybe it was years of pushing too hard. Maybe it was like a death in the family. Maybe they don't even know what triggered it. But now they can barely make it through the day without needing to lie down. And they've probably seen 5, 10, 15 specialists. They spent thousands on supplements and treatments with every test coming back, quote unquote, normal. And they're sitting there thinking, hey, nothing's wrong with me. Why do I feel like I'm dying? And they probably stopped making plans because they don't know if their body's going to cooperate. So they end up watching birthdays and holidays and life. They watch that from the sidelines. And the worst part is they start believing that this is just who they are now. So in addition to the physical symptoms, there's a whole another emotional and psychological aspect. It's like the identity loss, right? And so these people usually, they chase the diagnosis, they go to all the specialists, but after that doesn't work, they've been on this merry-go-round, everything comes back normal. So now they don't just feel sick physically, they start to feel like they're going crazy. Like maybe they're making it up. That's a really dark place to be. Usually what happens after that is they take matters into their own hands. They try to become their own doctor, right? And so they're buying supplements or things that try to fix their mitochondria, detox their liver, heal their gut. And they might get a little boost for a week or so, maybe a month, but then they're right back to where they started, or even worse, because now they've added this whole nothing works for me to their belief system. And then usually that leads to the last part where they can really get stuck. And they do what they've always known, which is they try to push through. They think if they just exercise more or force themselves to be positive or power through like they used to, they'll break out of it. But a hypersensitive nervous system will punish you for that, right? So one good day leads to 3 bad days, then they crash. Now they're terrified to try anything because they don't know what is going to set them off. So the one problem with all of these different things, like everything I just said, why none of that works is because all of those approaches treat the symptoms. They treat the surface level problems. They don't address the actual source. And what we've found, as long as people have had their tests and scans done, if nothing is working and the doctor's hands are tied and you're left on your own, the source usually is a nervous system that's stuck in survival mode. It's like a chronic threat response. That's exactly what we help people with, because once we address that, we're addressing the root cause, right? But it takes a lot of work. You need to teach your nervous system that it's safe to come out of that survival mode, or else nothing else will really stick. Supplements don't stick. Treatments don't stick. The good days don't stick, but once you understand that, everything changes because recovery becomes a process with actual steps, not just like a mystery that you're
Oh.
hoping will solve itself.
So you're saying that when this is happening, it's really important not to focus on those symptoms, but to treat the root cause. And this is often those people that have that hypersensitive nervous system that are stuck in that survival mode, which, as you've probably heard with my podcast episodes, that's a lot of my clientele, people listening. So people that are in that realm, really struggling. Do you have a client in mind that you could share generalities of their experience or maybe even yours of what that looks like? Okay, I don't want to treat the symptoms. Now what? Now what do I do? I know that I have this hypersensitive nervous system. I know I'm in survival mode. Now what?
Yeah, usually people find us after they've gone through all of their research. We're usually like the last resort people go to when nothing else has worked. And someone's listening to this, I wonder if they're the kind of person who's spent more time Googling their symptoms than actually living their life in the last few months. If they've canceled plans last minute because they just didn't trust their body. So people usually find our content, and I have almost 2,000 videos on YouTube describing almost every symptom, every situation, every roadblock you could run into. And usually people watch it and then something resonates because I'm saying things that no one else would ever understand unless they've actually been there. So when I say things like, I would stand up off the couch to go get a glass of water, but then my heart would skip and I get shortness of breath. And then I feel like I'm having a heart attack. And then I reach for my phone and I put 911 in the phone, but then I have to make that split second decision. Am I going crazy? Is this real? Am I just in a nightmare? I say a lot of the things in my videos that people never say out loud, right? And when people hear something or see something where they're like, wait a minute, that's exactly what I'm dealing with, it opens up their mind to another alternate solution. But usually people have to be pretty open-minded for this kind of stuff because it's very difficult to grasp the concept that the physical symptoms someone's feeling in their body is actually coming from their brain. There's so many parents. There's one particular parent, actually, shout out to Miriam. She is crushing it in our recovery ecosystem. She just comes to mind because it's the most recent one, but she has kids, right? But she was so bad. She was bedridden, out of worse for 1 year straight, dark room, earplugs, family bringing her food to the bed. She's been sick for 4 years, but 1 year completely bedridden, right? A lot of Googling symptoms, a lot of trying different medications. She even took hydrocortisone, the doctors, but that ended up making her bones way worse. She ended up slipping or falling, broke six vertebrae while having all of these other symptoms. And so it was just like a downward spiral, right? And this is while she was working with us for 6 months. We realized that, okay, it's probably not good to be on all this hydrocortisone and hormone things. It's not even really maintaining a baseline. It's actually making you worse. So she doubled down on the nervous system approach. By the way, I'm not saying go against what your doctor says, right? Follow what they tell you to do. But at some point, you have to make a decision on what's best for you. But with her, broke 6 vertebrae. She had a gallbladder. They had to remove her gallbladder. While she was bedridden, they had to bring her to the hospital and she was in a stretcher. But kept working through it, kept following the protocols, which is essentially like responding as best you can to symptoms. And also we help people plan their activity. Like how much can you sit up right now? How many times can you take a shower during the week? When can you start making food and helping out with the family? But anyways, fast forward, she just posted something in the community a few weeks ago. She was on a ski hill because she just went skiing. And there's a picture of her smiling with her family in the sunshine. This beautiful mountain in the background, enjoying pizza with her family. And food was also something she could not tolerate. And she's just on the upward spiral now, right? But she had to triple down on the stuff we were doing. Very difficult to do, especially with all those other physical things going on. But she had that thriver mindset, is what I call it. Right? It's not a survivor mindset. It's the opposite. It's a thriver, where you know that recovery is inevitable there's a life after this, a life that's worth fighting for. And that's really the mindset we try to instill in everybody because it is possible to get your life back as long as you've had all the tests and scans done.
I appreciate you telling me those examples. That helps clients visualize that a little bit more. But for you, you said that, am I right there, about 8 months of you being spoon fed?
Yeah, that was at my worst. It was 6 months being spoon fed. And then the last 2 months of that, I was actually straight up in the hospital. Prior to that, I was with my grandparents, but 2 months in the hospital, spoon fed, actually hooked up to IVs. They were trying anything and everything they could. Thank God I was in Canada and I had insurance because I was in there for 2 months. That would have been very pricey in other countries if I didn't have insurance.
So how did you manage that? Like the discouragement of not knowing, of so many question marks in your own life before you went down this path?
Yeah, like a lot of people listening to this, if they've been through the trenches like this, and maybe they weren't even bedridden, maybe they were still semi-functional, but there are so many nights where you're trying to sleep and you're feeling all these symptoms and you start to feel obviously terrible physically, but you start to wonder, like, what did I do to deserve this? I was just living my life. I was working really hard. That's how I got this. I was a personal trainer, working 12 hours a day, skip that. Not, I was definitely skipping meals, drinking lots of energy drinks, but my intention was like to become the best version of myself, to have the highest output, to maximize my productivity. And those are the kind of people who get this. So when I'm lying there with all these symptoms and I'm missing out on birthdays and my friends want to hang out, they're graduating, right? We're all 21, 22, 23. I can't go on camping trips. I can't go watch the fireworks with them. I can't go out to a restaurant with them because my nervous system is so hypersensitive. You start to wonder, like, what did I do to deserve this? And is this going to be my life forever? And you try to find proof online of people getting better. But at the time, back in 2016, most of the stuff was like, oh, if you get this, you have this forever. There is no cure to this. Just find your baseline, maintain. And for me, it took hitting rock bottom to be open to the idea that, okay, this is my brain. And here's actually where everything changed for me. It was when I was rock bottom. So I had been in the hospital actually leading up to that. The reason I went to the hospital, I was with my grandparents for 6 months. Both my grandparents were feeding me. I could take a shower maybe once every 3 weeks, and my 72-year-old grandma would wipe me down in the shower because I was so weak. My grandpa would help me brush my teeth. As I was recovering, my biggest fear was something happening to my grandparents while I was sick. Lo and behold, I guess the universe had this plan for me, but my grandpa ended up having a stroke and passing away. And I was in the hospital when I was holding his hand when he flatlined. And to me, that was like my hero, right? Because he was the one who was keeping me alive. So to hold his hand and him to pass away right in front of me, it just overloaded my nervous system, an already sensitive nervous system. But also, like, I had a special connection with him. I didn't feel like he really left. It's like a whole spiritual side to this. But anyways, physically, really jacked up my body. At that point, after he passed away, I tried staying home. I tried getting by for another 2 weeks. My body went into, one night I tried taking a bath. Body went into a seizure. And my dad was blending food for me at that point. It was rice and tilapia. I was drinking it and I couldn't even tolerate that. So finally, we call the ambulance and finally they take me seriously and they're like, okay, we'll let him stay overnight. Because all the other times they turned me away. But I was in the ICU for about a month, ran every test they could. I'm lying there. There's people next to me being told they have 3 weeks to live. What am I doing here? I'm 22. This is like my golden years. And then finally, this is where it gets crazy. They run all the tests. They say, Miguel, you're perfectly normal. You're not going to die. We don't have any more space for you in the ICU because you're somewhat stable. I was on IVs for about a month at this point. And then they said, you have two options. One, we could send you home and you could come back every day to work with this other doctor. Because if it's not your organs, we're going to see if it's something with your brain. You can work with a psychiatrist. And I was like, I can't go home. I can't function. And so they said, we have extra spaces in the psych ward. If you want to stay there, so you can work with a doctor. I said, I'm not crazy. I can talk to you. I'm not crazy. They said, you can volunteer to stay there. You could go home anytime, but that's how you can work with a doctor one-on-one. So I didn't really have a choice. I said, okay, I'll try it. But anyways, that doctor changed my life. He saved my life in a way because he looked at my binder full of tests for the last few years, looked at me and said, Miguel, I know exactly what's happening to you. I know why you're feeling these symptoms and you're going to be okay. I've seen this before. All you have is a hypersensitive nervous system. And if we can essentially update this glitch in your brain's software, you're going to be running again. You're going to be living your life. It's going to feel like all of this was a bad dream. And I was like, what? It's the first doctor who had any idea what was going on. And so for the next month, I worked with him almost every day. And he gave me all these analogies and examples of what was going on logically, why I was feeling the symptoms, why it wasn't going away, why I would flare up every time I did something. But essentially, I went from completely bedridden, just like knocking on death's door, it felt, to being in a wheelchair within a week, feeding myself. Within a week of that, I was using a walker. Then I was standing on my own 2 feet. And then within a month, it was right after my 23rd birthday, I got released back into the world with a new lease on life as like the 2.0 version of Miguel. And that was in 2018. And ever since then, it's been quite the ride because I don't have any more symptoms. I'm more fit than I was before. I think my capacity has way surpassed what I used to be able to do. And that's the message I try to tell everybody is that this illness is not a write-off. In fact, this could be a springboard to learn how to live life at your best and maximize your quote unquote potential without burning yourself out. That's how I found out about this information.
That's exactly what I was looking for. When it's a personal experience, it really helps us understand, like, what does that look like? And I know a lot of clients do have a lot of those health concerns. And in your case, it took being connected with the right person and a month of really focused work, it sounds like, to have those results that you wanted. And I know that's not how it works out for a lot of clients. And maybe you could speak to that with the ones that you work with as well. What does it take? Do you have to be at this rock bottom? Do you have to be in this mindset where you are ready to give it everything? How do you really know when somebody's ready for change and that it's going to change their lives the way it changed yours?
I think what would help is, first of all, share the things that do keep people stuck so that they know what to fix. The biggest thing stopping people from trying an approach like this is thinking they're different. They think, will this work for somebody like me? Like the more complex cases, people have been dealing with this for decades, or people having overlapping illnesses. They might think this might work for other people, work for Miguel, but I'm different, which makes total sense. You want to believe this could work, but you're scared of hoping and being wrong again. And I know there's somebody listening to this right now thinking, my case is more complicated than the typical case. I have factors that make me unique. Maybe I'm part of a small fraction of the people who will never recover, right?
Mm.
So the first thing is some people believe they've been sick too long to recover. The 10, 15, 20 years, they're thinking it's permanent damage, right? That this only works for people who've had this for a few months or max a couple years, which is a terrifying belief. But that's what Google says, right? But here's what nobody tells them. It's like, just us. And there's so many other companies out there, but just us. We work with people who've been sick for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. I think our record is 51 years. And she recovered. She's hiking. Like she's good to go. So the nervous system, it's not permanent damage. It's just stuck in this cycle, right? And that stickiness, and you can get unstuck regardless of how long you've been sick. We had Miriam, for example. She was sick for 4.5 years, bedridden for 1 year straight. And then she's skiing. She's going out with her family. The second thing is they think their personality is set in stone. It's like, I've always been a high achiever, a perfectionist, an overanalyzer. It's just how I've done things my whole life. So do I have to give up who I was before or who I am in order to heal? Will I be after that? And the thing is, We're not telling people you got to get rid of all of these habits.
Thanks so much for spending part of your day with us today. We know your time is precious, especially when you're juggling everything that comes with family life. If this conversation is stirring something within you and you're ready to stop running on empty, check out our course, Ignite Your Life, at fulfillmenttherapy.org. It's designed to help you reconnect with yourself and build the kind of personal growth that makes you a better parent, partner, and person. And if you're loving the show, leaving a review on Apple Podcasts takes just a minute, but means so much to us. It helps more families like yours find this content when they need it most. Stay tuned for part 2. Hey friends, if you enjoyed this episode, a quick 30-second share can help someone else find support and help this podcast grow. Leaving a review on Apple Podcasts boosts visibility and keeps the show alive. Your simple acts make a big difference. I'll see you back here each week for more life-changing episodes.